Have you ever felt like you're getting close to someone, but just when things start feeling good, they pull away? You wonder if it's something you said, something you did, or if they even want love at all? The truth is, avoidants don't fall in love the way most people do. They test before they trust. But once you understand their tests, you can stop taking it personally and start passing them with confidence. When you meet someone who has avoidant tendencies, one of the first and most subtle things they do, often without even realizing it, is create distance. This isn't necessarily because they don't like you or aren't interested. In fact, many times, the more interest they feel, the more likely they are to pull back at first. Their instinct for self-protection gets triggered by closeness. Deep down, there's a fear that intimacy will lead to losing control or getting hurt, so their default response is to create space. It's a way for them to test what you do with that space. Most people in this situation react in the exact way that triggers the avoidance fear. They sense the distance, they notice the withdrawal, and immediately their own insecurities kick in. They start overcompensating, they call more often, they send more texts, they initiate plans, ask if everything is okay, try to reassure or seek reassurance. The underlying message they send, often unintentionally, is, "I need you to close this gap because I feel uncomfortable with it." To an avoidant, that feels like pressure. The more you chase, the more they retreat. The cycle starts to feed itself. Your pursuit makes them feel suffocated, which makes them back away even more, which makes you chase even harder. Eventually, one person feels rejected and exhausted, and the other feels overwhelmed and trapped. The real key to passing this distance test is to respond differently than what their fear expects. When they create distance, they are not asking you to prove your love by closing it. They are testing whether you can stay emotionally grounded even when they aren't constantly providing you with attention or affirmation. They want to know, are you secure enough in yourself to let me breathe? Are you capable of allowing me to take space without personalizing it, without assuming it's a reflection of your worth or my feelings? The most attractive and reassuring thing you can do in that moment is to mirror their pace. Not in a passive-aggressive way, not as a game, but from a place of true confidence. If they pull back, you simply hold your ground. You don't disappear, but you don't chase either. You remain warm, open, and available when they reach out, but you allow them the room they need without trying to force connection in the meantime. This creates a sense of safety for the avoidant. They experience your steadiness and realize that being close to you doesn't come with pressure or demands. They start to feel that intimacy with you doesn't equal suffocation. What makes this so challenging for many people is that it requires sitting with discomfort. Most of us are wired to seek certainty in relationships. When someone withdraws, it feels like a threat to that certainty. Our impulse is to close the gap as quickly as possible to relieve our anxiety. But every time we do that with an avoidant partner, we reinforce their belief that closeness equals a loss of autonomy. The real courage is in resisting that impulse and trusting that the connection will naturally rebalance if we give it space. There's also a very subtle energy that comes with this approach. When you don't chase, you communicate confidence. You show that you enjoy their company, but don't need constant reassurance to feel secure. You demonstrate that your happiness isn't entirely dependent on their proximity. That self-assured energy is extremely attractive to someone with avoidant tendencies because it offers them a kind of relationship they may have never experienced before. One that allows them to stay close without feeling trapped. At the same time, it's important to stay attuned to your own boundaries. Giving someone space doesn't mean tolerating neglect or accepting crumbs of attention. It means allowing for natural rhythms of closeness and distance while still expecting mutual respect and communication. You are not abandoning your own needs. You're simply not reacting from fear. You're choosing to respond from security instead of anxiety. This approach helps break the pattern that so often sabotages early connections with avoidance. Instead of turning the dynamic into a tug-of-war, you create a dynamic where both people feel safe. The avoidant learns that intimacy doesn't automatically lead to losing themselves, and you maintain your sense of self-worth regardless of their fluctuations in availability. Over time, as they experience this new dynamic, their need to test you with distance naturally diminishes. They begin to associate closeness with safety rather than threat. Avoidants are often deeply sensitive people who have learned to protect themselves through space and withdrawal. By responding to their distance with calm steadiness instead of panic, you become the person who helps them rewrite that story in their mind. You allow them to experience intimacy in a way that feels safe, non-threatening, and deeply reassuring. When you're dealing with someone who leans avoidant, one of the most fundamental needs they have is the need for independence. Independence isn't just a preference for them, it's wired into their sense of emotional safety. To an avoidant, independence often equals control, freedom, and peace of mind. It's how they manage anxiety around intimacy. For many of them, life has taught them that relying too much on someone else can lead to disappointment, vulnerability, and loss of self. So they build their lives around a strong sense of self-sufficiency. They make their own decisions, they create their own schedules, they cultivate personal interests, and they maintain a world where they feel in charge of their own emotional state. And when they meet someone new, even if they feel drawn to that person, the immediate question that arises in the back of their mind is whether this new connection will threaten their autonomy. In early stages of connection, the avoidant person is carefully observing how much you respect their space. They watch how you respond when they want time alone, when they prioritize work or personal hobbies, or when they need to take things slow. If they sense that your presence means losing the ability to move freely through their life, they'll instinctively put up walls. This is where many people unintentionally fail the independence test. They take the avoidant's desire for personal space as a lack of interest or affection. They feel hurt, insecure, or rejected, and in response, they attempt to pull the person closer. They suggest more frequent dates, more phone calls, more constant check-ins. They start subtly or overtly asking for reassurance that the relationship is progressing, that feelings are mutual, that they're not wasting their time. All of this pressure triggers the avoidant's core fear. Suddenly, what felt like a safe and enjoyable connection starts to feel heavy, overwhelming, and filled with expectations. The key to passing the independence test is to flip your perspective. Instead of viewing their independence as a threat to your connection, see it as part of their personality that can actually strengthen the relationship if handled correctly. Independence is not a barrier to intimacy, it's a different way of approaching it. When you genuinely support and even celebrate their independent streak, you allow them to feel safe being themselves within the relationship. You're not trying to change them or make them fit into your timeline. You're showing that you're attracted to who they are, not who you want them to become. This doesn't mean being passive or pretending that you don't care. It means respecting the natural rhythm of the connection. You allow for space without resenting it. You enjoy your own life when they're tending to theirs. You keep investing in your passions, friendships, and goals, which in turn makes you more attractive because you're demonstrating that your happiness isn't dependent on their constant presence. You create an environment where being together feels like a choice rather than an obligation. This freedom allows the avoidant to actually desire more closeness over time rather than feeling pressured into it. Often, avoidants fear that relationships will demand them to give up the things they value most. They worry that being in love will mean sacrificing their routines, compromising on their career, or losing precious alone time. When you show them that you are not a threat to those aspects of their life, you're providing a kind of reassurance that penetrates far deeper than verbal affirmations ever could. You're proving through your actions that you're a partner who adds to their life, not someone who's here to take it over. It's also important to understand that avoidants often don't ask for space directly. Instead, they signal it through subtle behaviors. They may take longer to reply to texts. They may prioritize solo activities. They may not initiate plans as frequently as you might hope. Rather than interpreting these actions as rejection, recognize them as their way of maintaining equilibrium. If you stay steady in response, it signals to them that you trust the connection enough not to micromanage it. That kind of emotional security is incredibly attractive because it feels safe and rare. When you give an avoidant person room to breathe, you also give yourself space to assess the relationship clearly. You're not chasing or forcing outcomes. You're observing whether the connection grows naturally when both people have the freedom to be themselves. You allow genuine intimacy to emerge without distortion from anxiety or pressure, and you begin to see whether the avoidant, given the right conditions, is capable of building something secure and lasting with you. Understanding the independence test isn't about playing a role or suppressing your needs. It's about recognizing the reality of how this person experiences closeness. You honor their need for autonomy while staying connected to your own sense of worth. You provide them the freedom that allows their affection to deepen rather than contract. You meet them where they are without losing who you are in the process. When it comes to avoidance, one of the most significant and delicate tests they run is around emotional safety. At their core, avoidants have a complicated relationship with vulnerability. While they may crave deep connection like anyone else, they also fear what that kind of openness might cost them. For many avoidants, vulnerability has been associated with pain, disappointment, or loss of control at some point in their past. So even when they feel drawn to someone, there's a protective mechanism that kicks in and makes them cautious about revealing their inner world. They're constantly evaluating whether it's safe to let their guard down or whether opening up will leave them exposed and hurt. In the early stages of a relationship, an avoidant might seem open, charming, even playful, but when it comes to expressing deeper emotions, they often hold back. Instead of rushing into vulnerability, they'll test the waters with small disclosures, sharing minor insecurities or personal details to gauge your response. It's almost like a trial balloon they send up to see whether you'll catch it gently or pop it. These moments might seem casual, but they carry more weight than you realize. The way you react to these small bids for emotional connection informs whether they feel safe enough to share more of themselves. The mistake many people make in these moments is responding in ways that feel unsafe to the avoidant, even if well-intentioned. One common reaction is to minimize or dismiss the emotion. For example, if they reveal a fear or insecurity and you immediately jump to telling them not to feel that way or that it's not a big deal, they may interpret that as you not taking their emotions seriously. Another common reaction is to rush in and try to fix the problem. You might immediately start offering advice, trying to solve whatever issue they're sharing. While this comes from a good place, it can make the avoidant feel like you're trying to control their feelings or that there's no room for them to simply express themselves without being managed. The key to passing the emotional safety test is creating a space where their emotions can exist without judgment or immediate solutions. When they share something vulnerable, your role is not to fix or dismiss, but to validate. You acknowledge what they're feeling, you listen fully, and you make them feel seen and understood. This kind of response signals to the avoidant that emotional expression doesn't automatically lead to discomfort, control, or a loss of power. Instead, it feels calm, safe, and freeing. Avoidants often carry the unspoken belief that if they open up emotionally, they'll lose control of the situation or be judged for their feelings. When you demonstrate that you can handle their vulnerability with care and steadiness, you start to dissolve that fear. They begin to associate vulnerability with connection instead of danger. Over time, this builds trust, which is essential if an avoidant is ever going to let down their full guard and allow true intimacy to develop. What makes this even trickier is that avoidants don't always present their vulnerabilities directly. Sometimes vulnerability shows up as irritability, withdrawal, or even small criticisms. Underneath these behaviors is often anxiety about getting closer or fear of being hurt. If you respond to these behaviors with defensiveness, frustration, or neediness, it reinforces their fear that emotional expression leads to conflict or discomfort. But if you can maintain composure and recognize that these moments are often fear masquerading as distance or negativity, you provide the kind of emotional stability that encourages them to open up more honestly over time. Your ability to create emotional safety doesn't just benefit the avoidant, it elevates the relationship for both of you. When both people feel safe to express their true feelings without fear of judgment or overreaction, intimacy deepens naturally. Communication becomes more honest, conflict becomes easier to navigate, and the foundation of trust grows stronger with each interaction. Avoidants, who may have rarely experienced relationships where they felt fully safe to be themselves, begin to experience something new and healing through your steadiness. There's also a subtle energy that you bring to these moments when you get it right. You're not walking on eggshells, nor are you trying to control the emotional temperature of the conversation. You're simply present, calm, and compassionate. You trust that their emotions don't need to be fixed in the moment. You trust that sitting with them in their discomfort is often more powerful than offering solutions. That trust allows the avoidant to feel more secure not only in you, but in their own ability to navigate emotional intimacy. They realize that being vulnerable with you doesn't cost them anything. It doesn't mean losing control, and it doesn't lead to judgment. It simply allows for connection. One of the most subtle but powerful tests avoidants run in relationships revolves around control. For them, control is a shield that helps manage the discomfort they feel around intimacy. The closer someone gets to them emotionally, the more they start to worry about losing their sense of agency. In many cases, this fear of losing control isn't conscious. It shows up in behaviors that can seem confusing to the person dating them. One moment, they seem fully engaged, attentive, and present. The next, they may pull back, create distance, or become indecisive about the future. This back and forth isn't about playing games. It's often their way of trying to preserve a sense of personal power in a situation that feels increasingly vulnerable. When an avoidant starts to care about someone, their natural response is to keep one hand on the brake. They're drawn in by the connection, but frightened by the speed or direction it may take if they fully let go. They test whether you'll try to take over the wheel. Will you start dictating how fast the relationship moves? Will you try to control how much time they spend with you? Will you demand declarations of commitment before they're ready? The moment they sense they're losing control over the relationship's pace or structure, their instincts tell them to retreat. This is not because they don't care, but because losing control feels like stepping into dangerous territory where they might get trapped or overwhelmed. A common mistake people make in this situation is trying to secure the relationship by increasing their own sense of control. They start setting ultimatums, pushing for clear labels, or trying to schedule every detail of how the relationship should unfold. This can come from a place of anxiety or a desire for certainty, but to the avoidant, it feels like a threat. The more you try to control, the more you trigger their fear of being trapped, and the more they back away to regain a sense of safety. Passing this control test requires adopting a very different approach. Instead of trying to steer the relationship to where you want it to go, you invite collaboration. You make space for the avoidant to feel like an equal participant in shaping the dynamic between you. This doesn't mean suppressing your own needs or avoiding important conversations, but it means delivering those conversations in a way that leaves room for both of you to contribute. You express what you want with openness, not pressure. You share your feelings without demanding a specific outcome. You create an environment where they feel safe expressing where they are emotionally, even if it's not exactly where you are in that moment. When you do this, you show them that being in a relationship doesn't mean losing autonomy. It means building something together where both people's feelings, timelines, and boundaries matter. This shared control is far less threatening to the avoidant, because they don't feel forced into decisions or changes before they're emotionally ready. Instead of feeling like they're being carried along by your agenda, they feel like an active participant in building the relationship's foundation. Another important part of passing this test is being mindful of how you respond to their natural rhythms of closeness and distance. When they lean in, enjoy those moments fully. When they pull back slightly, don't try to chase or close the gap immediately. Trust that their temporary retreat isn't necessarily a sign of disinterest. Sometimes they simply need to recalibrate and reassure themselves that they're still in control of their emotional space. Your ability to stay steady during these moments of distance communicates that you're not there to pressure them or take control. You're offering partnership, not domination. Your tone, your energy, and your ability to stay emotionally grounded all contribute to how safe they feel in relinquishing some of their need for control. The more they experience you as someone who respects their boundaries and autonomy, the less they feel the need to constantly assert control over the relationship. Over time, this creates a natural opening for deeper closeness because they start to trust that love with you doesn't equal losing themselves. Avoidants often have a deep-rooted fear that love means surrendering control over their emotions, their routine, and their identity. The goal is to show them that real intimacy is not about control at all. It's about mutual respect, understanding, and freedom within the connection. You demonstrate that you can honor your own desires while giving them the space to honor theirs. This balance allows trust to grow naturally without forcing outcomes or manufacturing closeness before it's ready to emerge on its own. One of the most critical tests an avoidant will put you through before fully allowing themselves to fall in love is the test of stability. Stability isn't just a nice quality for them, it's a necessity. For someone with avoidant tendencies, inconsistency is deeply unsettling because it activates their fears around attachment and abandonment. They've often experienced situations where love felt unpredictable, where people who were supposed to be there for them ended up pulling away, becoming unreliable, or changing without warning. As a result, they've trained themselves to expect instability as part of emotional closeness and to protect themselves by staying guarded. The only way they can begin to feel safe is when they sense that the person they're opening up to offers a consistent, steady presence. In many ways, avoidants are hypersensitive to emotional shifts in others. They notice the tone of your voice, the timing of your replies, the changes in your mood, even subtle signs of frustration or anxiety. Any variation can trigger alarm bells, making them wonder if emotional chaos is around the corner. That's why their test of stability is not based on big moments, but on how you show up in the small, everyday interactions. They're constantly reading how reliable you are with your emotions, your communication, your reactions, and your presence.